Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With fishingbooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. Fishingbooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to fishingbooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.
Hey parents, how do you make smarter choices for your kids' college today? That's where Sally can help. With Sally, you can find scholarships, funding options, tools, and guidance all in one place. And if you need a loan, Sally has options for different families and different situations. College is only worth it if you do it right. So don't just help your kid go. Help them go smarter. Sally.com/GoParents.
All right, welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass podcast. Today, we're going to call the episode Prepping 101. I don't know, a lot of thoughts lately, and, I look at our country and where we're at, and I feel like, people really need to have somewhere to get started and kind of take their prepping plan a little bit seriously, come up with, a real strategy and something to do. I guess I was disturbed. I was in somebody's house doing a repair, and I'm listening to the news, and, all the time, people are watching CNN or whatever and the different stuff, and I hear news that's different than the news I listen to. Most of the time, I'm probably listening to talk radio or whatever. I don't even have cable, so Fox News and that isn't really the option. But so I was listening to CNN and I'm hearing them talk, and it just amazes me how divided our country is. How night and day the two news channels, really are, you can say MSNBC or ABC and CBS News and all the different ones have different opinions. But people's core beliefs, people, when you disagree, how much have we gotten to where we hang out with family members and we know, that's a red flag. Don't talk about that issue at all. It used to be like abortion was the big thing. And you just, I can't talk to them about abortion because they'll go crazy. Now it's kind of everything. Oh, God, you mentioned Donald Trump. Oh, you like that liar? And it gets crazy. People are like, over the top, out of control when they hear about these things. And it's kind of disturbing. And the same thing, with the conservatives, I like to think, or libertarians, whatever, I like to think they're a little more tolerant. But, immediately, Obama or Hillary and all of a sudden they're filled with disgust and rage. And I don't even understand how you can like that person, or, how could you vote for them? And, whatever. We all have different opinions of how you get the logic there and whatever. It doesn't really matter. My point is, we're very divided. So I'm listening to the news, and they're saying things like, all right, we'll put it this way. So you listen to conservative radio, and I hear things like all the Trump's guys who are being investigated, they're all decent guys, and they're just being framed, and, they're just looking for anything and trying to strong-arm people. The investigation from Mueller is so outside the scope, of what was assigned by Rosenstein or whoever it is, right? But then when you turn on the other news, it ends up being that, there is so much corruption in Trump's organization that it's just everywhere and rampant, and that's why these people, I think the wording they used was, at best, they're horribly corrupt, immoral people, and at worst, they're, outright criminals looking to undermine the country. And, on CNN, the guy's talking and he's like, well, they're so corrupt and I can't believe they're getting away with this and blah, blah, blah. And then the lady interviewing him was like, well, some people are worried about the FBI leaking all this information. And the response to that was, well, none of that matters. It doesn't matter because the truth has to get out. And so all faith in our, FBI and organization like that, that's insignificant because I can look past everything else because of my hatred and whatever for these people who I believe are corrupt. But on the same token, on the other side with the conservatives, they're so adamant that, these other people are just out to get them. How do you even find the line for the truth? Well, what's more concerning about that is there is so much hatred. And more, we're getting where, people feel that the system is so corrupt and so divided that they're justified in going out and blocking polling stations or, going and, destroying, smashing police cars and different things like that. And I know that's kind of laid off in the news lately, but this stuff just kind of keeps coming back. And every time it comes back a little bit stronger with the next controversy, and now, so hardcore against the guns. And yeah, that's died down a little bit, but stuff is slowly, creeping. But more and more, the corruption is just building and building. And the hatred and the divide between everybody is getting so much bigger. And I got to tell you, I feel like the value for the individual is really getting lost. People don't see people as people anymore. You're against the greater good. You're destroying our planet. You're destroying whatever. Your system is oppressive. You're racist. You're whatever. All this stuff that they hate you so much as an individual that your life doesn't even matter. They're cool with throwing rocks at people or, whatever, doing whatever craziness that they feel is right. And I gotta say, this uneasiness just makes me feel like we live in a tinderbox. We, at any time things could turn and change into something ugly, where you don't want to go outside, where, if in Nazi Germany, they used to have the armbands and they'd come around and be tough. You had the night of the broken glass, Kristallnacht, right? And same thing, you have, people who, now Antifa have their red armband and they're like, oh, we're anti-fascist, but somehow we're just acting just like the Nazi youth, right? So it's always, something building. And same thing about how I feel like some of us live in different worlds. I put a post up on Facebook earlier this week, and it was kind of a lighthearted joke, but whatever, kind of serious too, whatever. I put on there about, does anybody else wipe off the fingerprints off of bullet casings before you load magazines? And I put something like, because you never know how your day is going to play out or something, whatever. It doesn't matter. That's not the point. Point is, I get comments, a lot of people are like, in line with my thinking, hence you follow my Facebook page and join my Facebook group and you listen to my podcast. But then I get other people who are like, oh, well, why wouldn't you just let the courts and the laws figure it out? And I would always do the right thing and want, there to be proof and, everybody know which casings are mine and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I got to tell you, when I watch the courts and I see how things are so divided, I don't know that I live in that world. I guess the reason I brought it up, I was reading some kind of apocalypse novel and, somebody's out at some kind of big rally and they end up getting cornered by 20 or 30 people in a big angry mob. And, they pull their gun because they're about to get smashed with bats. And then somebody grabs the gun and tries to wrestle it out of one of their hands. So they end up shooting the guy and they take off. Well, if that scenario goes to court, how is that going to play out for you? You're going to be like, oh, there were 20 people who were, all say, yeah, it was you. We were just standing there innocently and you, pulled out a gun and shot somebody in cold blood. I don't know. A world like that, is that something you want to go report to the police and whatever? I mean, these are individual and every circumstance would be different. But I see the way these court cases play out and I find a lot of it disturbing. And my point is not that that's what somebody should be doing and whatever, and it doesn't really matter because that's not where I'm going with this. What I'm saying is we have such a different view of right and wrong and, trying to appease everyone and make everyone happy. I'm not sure that America has a moral code anymore, or at least our courts and our things. I don't feel like there's the guarantee of justice. I find that concerning, but I also find that as a reason to really be prepared, to be vigilant, to, start to step up your game and really, take prepping seriously. So that's basically what inspired this episode today. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. So when society breaks down and things, like I said, morals and laws don't seem to really matter. You need to ask yourself first, with prepping, what's going to kill me first? What am I afraid of? Now, for a lot of you guys, it may be natural disasters. You may be like, oh, well, I live in Hawaii and there's a giant volcano that's going to come get me. That's kind of a scary freaking thought, to be honest. Maybe you're in Puerto Rico and you realize that, hey, a hurricane could devastate me and leave me, destroyed where I can't get clean water, I can't get food. These things matter. Maybe, earthquakes in California. But honestly, if I lived in California, I'd be more worried about riots and fires and things like that. But, there's a lot of stuff going on there and you need to kind of have a plan for these things. What about even something simple like martial law? I mean, no, we don't expect that to happen. But what if they were like, oh, you can't leave your house for a week because people are rioting? Antifa went wild or whatever. Maybe it was election day and they're all, out blocking poll sites and blocking the entrances and not allowing people in. And all of a sudden things turn to riots and fights and, because nobody wants to lose their country. Well, these things you need to think about. So I think the beginning of anybody's prepper plan should be what's going to kill me first. And in the broad strokes, it's a lot of the items that I just mentioned. But when you define that, let's take those scenarios one step further. So one of these bad scenarios happens and I'm at my house. Now, if I have the supply stocked up in my home and I don't have to go out to the grocery store, I don't have to go to my job for, a week. I can, call in sick. I'm not forced to go out. I'm able to convince my wife and my family that they need to just stay home and be safe here. Maybe that's overreacting, whatever, but that right there is a huge part of your security. Not being forced to go into the grocery store where you're fighting over the last can of tuna fish, that's a part of your family's security. And that's something you need to consider. There's a big thing in the prepper world and survivalist world called the rule of threes. And it basically plays out like 3 minutes without air, 3 minutes without shelter, or 3 hours without shelter, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. Well, a lot of people think, oh, I need food and water. I'm out in the woods and whatever. That's my thing. But you got to have your priorities right. Now, obviously, the air isn't really something we imagine going away. I mean, the only way I see that applying is if I'm in some kind of fire or if I'm being choked out by somebody. So security or, fire, I guess, is an issue. But shelter. Now, shelter, I take to be a little broader than maybe most people. Shelter is your climate. If you're in Antarctica, that's where your 3 hours is going to be an issue. If you're just standing there and you have a coat and whatever, it's still going to be a problem. If you're in the middle of the desert and you don't have a way to get out of the sun or protect your body somehow, it's going to be a problem. Even here, where I live in the Northeast, if you, are out in the cold at 5 degrees or whatever, you're spending the night, that's going to be a problem, unless you can find a way to rectify that. But shelter also, to me, is, a level of security. I would figure that, and it's basically protecting yourself from an outside threat, be it the elements or the bad guys. I don't even know if you can go 3 hours with that then. But and then, 3 days without water, you got to think about a water supply, and 3 weeks without food. So food is definitely further down on your priority list. So with all that said, let's start to look at some of these things that we can, do to prepare. So what's important to you? You need to think about, like I said, having shelter, having some kind of home. Maybe you're not going to have a toilet. Maybe your plumbing's going to stop working because, the town water gets shut off. Home defense. I would recommend people look into like a survival library. A survival library helps you, understand the threats that are out there. You can really expand your knowledge on first aid and taking in all that kind of stuff. Books, YouTube, videos, going to training classes. These things are going to make a huge improvement in your confidence as well as your, overall preparedness, because you're going to know. You're going to know what to do. You're going to have seen it before. It's like training with a firearm. If you're going to the range and shooting and doing those repetitive motions, you're going to learn to be able to do it with just instinct. You're not going to, panic and freeze up as likely, when the time comes, when you actually need it. It's going to be old hat and something that you just know to do. And that's going to be with, your first aid and, bushcraft skills. Get out there, go camping, do things. You need to prepare for power outages. Maybe a generator. A lot of us are like, well, I don't have to worry about my water because I have a well. I'm in control of that. Well, you're only in control of that if you either have some kind of submersible that you can drop down into your well and pull the water out, or you have a good generator and enough gas to make it last. So those are some important issues you want to think about. Now, like I touched on earlier, you're going to need long-term food storage. And again, depending on what you're preparing for, maybe that's a week for your family. Maybe that's 2 weeks. To me, it's longer than that because I don't want to have to go out and be desperate. And that's the thing. When you force yourself to, I have to go to the grocery store and get any last-minute supplies, well, that's because you didn't prepare enough. Long-term food storage, I got to say, putting, $2,000 in your family's, plan, it doesn't sound like a horrible, unreasonable risk. I mean, even if inflation hits or you lose your job or anything like that, being able to feed your family is kind of an important thing. So, that's something you want to prepare for. Now, do I think you should take your credit card and go buy $2,000 at My Patriot Supply? No, I don't think that. I think every now and again when you have some extra money, You maybe, when I'm pushing those $99 for a month supply of food for one person, maybe you buy one, maybe you buy two, and you throw those on the shelf. And then a couple months later, you have another extra 100 or $200. You buy another month or two of food. Because you got to remember, if you have a family of 4 and you buy a month's supply of food, well, guess what? That's only a week of food because there's 4 of you. So you got to plan for that kind of thing. You also need to have some kind of water storage. Like I said, having a well or some kind of outside source is great, but depending on the area you live in, water can really be an issue. And really counting on the creeks and streams and stuff, you really need a good way to purify it and to keep it clean because, all of a sudden things that are nice, clean rivers become toilets when, people are desperate for water and they're in there showering and, whatever, staying clean upstream from you. So just have a plan. Think a little bit further about your water. Now, if you want like details on all this stuff, I go hardcore into each one of these items. We have a whole hour episode. I think it's 2 episodes on water storage. And we have a whole episode on just food storage. So that's why I'm not, digging too deep. This is basics, what I want you guys to think about and, how to plan. Another thing you want to consider is communications. You need to think about my family, my wife's at work, my kids are at school, and something bad happens. How do I get them home? Do they know what to do? This is your standard ready.gov commercial, where they're like, if routine changes, what do you do? If you can't get somewhere, I remember we had a blackout and I was, what would normally be 40 minutes from home, which still isn't that close, but it's about how far I am out usually in the day. And the power went out over the whole Northeast, so we had no street lights. And it took probably 4 hours to drive home because of the no street lights. You just can't get there. So you're supposed to pick up your kid from school, and now with the power out everywhere and no cell phones working and whatever, what do your kids do? How do they figure that out? That's the kind of thing I'm talking about with communications. And if there is no feasible way to really do that, then is there a way that you can, because with radios and relays and relay towers, things like that, there are some options out there for you. We even have an episode on that on ham radio you might want to check out. But also, do they know a contingency plan? All right, I haven't heard from Dad. It doesn't look like Dad's going to show up. Do I stay here and wait? Or do I, try and find a way home with my friends here? Or what do I do? So discussing these things beforehand is, definitely the good approach and something you want to do. Also, do you have like alternative cooking? Do you have a way to do, prepare your food and keep that kind of lifestyle going? People always talk about, oh, well, I don't want to have the big barbecue outside because all my neighbors will know that I'm the one with food. Well, that might be cool on day 1 or 2 when your freezer's shut down and you're just trying to use up the meat. That might work. But long term, you might need a more stealthy kind of option. So just consider that when you're purchasing food, how you're going to prepare it. It was a goal of mine to set up some kind of outdoor grill and different things. And eventually I got there. And now I have things the way I want it to be. One of the early steps that I took was Kevin was able to hook me up with a bunch of propane cylinders that he found at a trailer park that people had left there that were rusty and old and nasty. And we just took those and traded them in at like Lowe's or whatever and got brand new, tanks. And you just pay for the fill-up because you swap the can, so that worked out good. And we were able to, now I have like 6 propane tanks full sitting in my yard. So that's going to buy me time. I can really, take care of stuff. Back to, shelter. Do you have, in the winter when your furnace goes out, do you have a way to deal with it? Because it sucks when you're the survivalist prepper and you miss these stupid steps. Man, the power goes out when it's 20 outside. Can you handle that right now? That's something you have to deal with that actually becomes a real issue. I had mentioned it in a previous episode, I think, but New Year's Eve, I think, my power went out, or my furnace went out. It wasn't my power. My furnace went out and died. And I even knew how to fix it. I knew what was wrong, but it was basic parts that I usually keep on hand that I can handle things. But when I had gone to the store the last time, they didn't have the parts in stock. And then I just got distracted with life and I let it go. And all of a sudden I realized, hey, I'm the big prepper guy. And now my house is 50 degrees because I can't take care of my family. And that's not cool. These are the basics. Start with the basics. Have a little redundancy. In the survival community, they always say, 1 is none, 2 is 1, and 3 is extra, or something like that. I don't know. I don't even know how it goes. But redundancy is the key. That's what you guys want to do. The other thing is to start having these discussions with your family. Talk to them about stuff so that if people are on board, if things turn bad and your wife's like, oh, but our kids like their favorite cereal, and if I don't go to the grocery store now and get it, and you're putting your life at risk. One, if you decide what's important beforehand, you can kind of stock up and have a little extra, even if it's just a rotation through 4 boxes of cereal or whatever, and that's just a stupid example. But you get the idea. You can have that on hand, but also having your family understand, hey, it's not worth fighting with people in the grocery store if I can just do a little bit of planning. I don't want to put myself in danger, and because all of a sudden your security risks completely change when you have to go on missions to the grocery store. And we don't want to live in a world where it's a mission to go to the grocery store, but that sometimes happens. And that's something that, you guys need to consider. The other thing is eventually, once you prepare for that, there's firearms. Owning firearms. I know if you listen to our guns episode, you might, we talk in more detail about what type of guns, what might be useful around the home, but and what might be good for home security, but also getting comfortable, learning how to use, getting familiar, getting where you carry it and it's your right hand, where you're not afraid of it. Just having it on you all the time, all of a sudden your kids aren't afraid of it. They're not, whatever. Then when your kids hit the right age, whatever you decide that is, then getting them comfortable with shooting. And maybe it's starting out with BB guns or whatever and building up, or paintball, different things like that, building up to a higher level. Probably safer to me to have a kid shooting a .22 rifle than it is shooting a paintball gun, but whatever. Because the basics, I don't know, if you prepare them, you should be all right. But anyway, so getting everybody familiar, doing the training, getting comfortable, knowing how to clean your guns, keeping them clean, taking care of them. Also having, I hate to say it, an evacuation plan. A lot of us might live in the city or even in, town or whatever, where things could get hairy, if people are rioting and things are catching on fire, things like that, nobody wanted to be in LA when Rodney King, they were having those riots back in the day. Things like that can escalate and get out of control. So knowing what's important to you in your house and having it accessible where you're not spending 3 hours trying to find your stuff, having things kind of ready to go and being able to bug out and go somewhere else, even if it's for a day or two or whatever. Having a plan where you could go stay at your friend's house who lives, more in the country or whatever. Maybe keeping a couple things, even a small bag of clothes out there. It's not a horrible idea. Other people in the world have lived like this for forever. And we're so used to, security and safety in America. We think that everything is just, available to us and right here. But that's not, always going to be maybe an option. That's the idea of being a prepper, is planning for the unknown. Having that bug out bag ready to go. Those things, that's kind of the world for the rest of, for everybody else. We've had it kind of cush in America. And I got to say, as America's morals fall, it's different. Things are changing. It doesn't have to be the Christian set of morals, but people don't care about people. And I find it a little frustrating, and there's a lot of anger out there and a lot of hatred. And I got to tell you, you guys might want to do a little prepping, a little preparing, a little planning for the future, because things could definitely end bad. Now, another thing you want to step up is your medical skills. You want to make sure you have basic supplies. Maybe some, they talk about like fish antibiotics. You want to get more hardcore into medical, or, having basic trauma bags, having an understanding, having the right books, the right knowledge. These things really make a big difference with first aid. There's a lot of cool stuff. We have a sponsor, mymedic.us. They have a lot of the cool products you want to, supplement or add to your survival kit. They have a lot of cool stuff on there that, really could help you out. One of the things I just recently purchased, they have that quick clot gauze. I'd used that before, and it's kind of cool to be able to, stuff things in and seal holes up. Nobody likes when you're leaking fluids, right? So if you head over there, they have 15% off if you use the code BADASS. So that might be something you're looking into. Now, if you're thinking about survival, there's this great website called tacpack.com and tacpack.com. Now, they actually have like these guys are survivalists, vets, special op guys that, have some real training and understand quality products. And you know what it's like to have a quality product, a quality knife, like a guy who uses a Leatherman versus the guy who, uses the Lowe's $10, Cobalt or whatever, survival multi-tool. There's a difference. The function, the ease of use, the reliability, all of it makes a big difference, and it really affects how long it's going to last and how it's going to work. So these are guys who put together, quality stuff and really pick out the right things that are going to work for, they say for like operators and people, whatever. But if you just want things that work, these guys basically take this huge value package because they buy stuff in bulk, or I don't know how they get it all cheap. Maybe they have the right friends. I don't know. Maybe it's government surplus. Who knows? But bottom line, you're getting like $300 worth of stuff for like $49 a month. And sometimes it's $200 worth of stuff for $49. But either way, you're getting huge value. And they pick out the right tools for people like you. And you get an awesome freaking package every month sent in the mail. And the cool thing is, if you use the code BADASS, they're going to send you a cool gun cleaning mat. Maybe you've seen it. I put it up on the Facebook. A lot of cool stuff like that. And they'll look out for you, and it helps the show out. But they do a lot of cool stuff over there, and you guys might really be interested in what they got. It's worth a look, see what they got. The other thing I wanted to mention is that this show is a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. They have lots of great content at selfdefenseradio.net. Now, they have a bunch of other podcasts kind of along the line of like ours. We're all a little bit different, kind of have a different theme. It's not all survival and prepping. It's a lot of different guns and gun talk. And I was listening to a show this week called The Home Defense Show they have on there. Is pretty great. Guy's pretty entertaining and, a lot of good ideas, a lot of neat insight you might want to think about. But also with our stuff, you can always email us, email me or Kevin at preppingbadass@gmail.com. You want to check out our Facebook page. If you go to facebook.com/preppingbadass. We also have, if you go to Facebook, just search Prepping Badass. There's the Prepping Badass group. We do a lot of talk in there, and you'll hear things like my stupid comments about cleaning your bullets before you load magazines and things like that. Also, if you want to subscribe on iTunes, that'd be great for us. And we've really been stepping up our YouTube channel, so you may want to check that out. Again, if you search Prepping Badass on YouTube, you'll find us. I always put a link to these in the show notes, so you can always get there. But otherwise, stay safe, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With fishingbooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. Fishingbooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to fishingbooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.